Welcome to the IDP Playbook, where you thought we were dead, but we were just hiding. It's been quite a few weeks since we've been here. Trying to get a show during the regular season is already a pain as it is, but we're here, or at least Eric and I are. So we're gonna try and knock this thing out. How you been doing, bud?
I'm doing good, just busy. Tyler will be missed, but now we can make fun of him, and he has no way to defend himself.
Yeah, but he barely defended himself before. I really had no problem making fun of him to his face, or at least his computer face. But we've got about 3 weeks plus a couple of preseason games worth of talking points to go over. So let's just jump right into it. And let's start with the Philly linebacker situation, which is all sorts of convoluted and might be getting clearer because Kiko is dead. But even still, Kendricks is dead too, or injured, as they like to call it. Pretty much the only guy looking good besides Ryan's is Tyler's boy Jordan Hicks, who we're going to get to talk about without him here.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about the Philly linebackers before. I'm very, very vocal about Kiko Alonso, and it was kind of proven true. Not only is he hurt, but when he was in, he plays like a coverage cornerback. He does not want contact. He's getting a second opinion right now on his knee, but he's not. I took him off my top 50 Dino linebackers because he's not a full-time player. He's a nickel backer. Um, Hicks looked good. He put up a lot of stats in this spot. He actually played Kendricks' spot. And Kendricks is out, but I think he's supposed to be back this week or next week. So really, the future is Kendricks and Hicks, in my opinion. Kiko's just he has no value to me. I think Ryan's, when Kendricks comes back, will still play that base run stopper leader, but he's not some pinnacle of health either. So if you can get Jordan Hicks cheap, very cheap, I would definitely do it. But his price is going to keep going up, and some people are going to look at his box score and want to pay you a ton, like he's going to do that all year. And I don't think he will, just because Kendricks ain't going away, and Ryan's is still going to at least pull some snaps.
Yeah, Kendricks is already back in practice, so we should see him this week. And the one nice thing is this definitely clarifies the situation for him, and it kind of gives him it lets you keep him in where we ranked him beforehand and actually have confidence in that. Whereas Kiko, I mean, you saw it as early as week 1. I mean, they weren't even using him on first and second down. And in the second half, when they did, it looked like a mistake. The guy he's a beast in pass coverage. He's a beast as really a coverage linebacker altogether. But that doesn't turn into IDP stats unless you're Buffalo and they just throw him at you. It's just, if Kiko's down for the season, it's for the best for your IDP team, even though it sucks for him. And Hicks is a guy, if I'm probably waiting a week now that Kendricks is back, let everybody kind of lose that high point game from their memory. And because everybody's got such short-term memory in season. So, once Kendricks is back and has a good game, I'm going to go and shop around, try and pick me up some Jordan Hicks, because apparently he looks like an entirely different player than he did in the preseason, because he was hot garbage in the preseason. But let's talk about some more hot garbage. Let's talk about the linebacker situation in New York with the Giants. It's just Unga is what he's been getting the highest snap count out of all of them, and he's bad. But
yeah, he's terrible. He might be worse than Worlow.
Yeah, let's not go too far. But the crazy thing is, if he keeps getting those snaps, he's gonna have some IDP value, which you hate. It's the Warlow thing all over again. But he's not going to cost what Warlow costs. I actually went and picked up Unga in a couple of spots just because, some of my team's linebacker depth sucks. If I'm going to, I'm going to pick up a guy who's getting snaps. That's worth something.
Yeah, Unga is getting snaps, but his snap count went down last week because Beeson is back, and they are slowly acclimating Beeson. I'm just kind of just not interested in all these linebackers. I don't really know what the coaches are doing in New York. They seem to be screwing up everything. Unga cost them at least week 1 because he couldn't cover Jason Witten, and they just kept him out there that last drive. And it's like every linebacker is getting between 30 and 60% snaps. That's including Devin Kennard, who I really like is in a big play league because he's got sack potential. So right now, Kennard's the only backer I value in Dynasty, but I'm still just holding him on my bench right now.
Yeah, really, it's kind of the point where the only players I even want to touch on New York's defense is Landon Collins. Everybody else, it's either untalented or they're being completely underutilized. And I'm really starting to think that Coughlin's got to have something going on. He's got to have that Alzheimer's or something, because it not one decision has gone right for him all season. Like it's one of the better rosters they've had in the last couple of years, and they look as bad as they did with their shittiest roster. And it's not based on talent. It's these guys are not being utilized correctly. And really, I'm just steering clear of it. JPP, no thanks. I'm just gonna stick with Landon Collins and be happy.
Yeah, the only guy I would say with Landon Collins who's a must start is Prince Amukamura, because until he breaks, when he was good last week, and that was without DRC. When DRC's in there, they target Prince, and he knows how to tackle. So for one CB right now, right, with McCourty when he comes back. So, but other than those two guys, yeah, I don't want anything to do with the front seven. At least starting short term. I'll keep them on my bench, but yeah.
Yeah, and I completely forgot about Prince just because I try and avoid cornerback required leagues. But you're absolutely right. If you're in a league that requires him, he should be top of the list and guys that you want to hold on to. He's an every week starter, which is not really that common with them. And we're going to move on to the rookie IDPs. Some of the guys who have, we had varying opinions on during the preseason, but they've gone out and they've showed us for a couple weeks who they are. And we'll start with Vic Beasley, who, as much as I like his talent, I thought he was a shitty IDP value, and he went back to being a linebacker. So I guess I was somewhat right. But damn it, has he not looked amazing? He's the one shining bright star on that otherwise turd of a defense.
Yeah, I think you misspoke though. He's not a linebacker. He's a D end.
Is he still being kept as a D end on the on MFL? I could have sworn they switched him back to linebacker.
No, he's a D end. I don't know who you're thinking about. Maybe it's because looks like he got punched in the face. But if you're not looking at the Drew had an eye incident, so he looks a little beat up right now. But no, he's D end. He's playing in 4-3 defensive end. I was a little bit higher than you guys on Vic Beasley. I actually drafted him. I actually sold him too, just because it was a league where it was very balanced. And I mean, the reason you and Tyler didn't like him is because he doesn't have a tackle floor. He still doesn't have a tackle floor. He's just had a couple sacks because he's so good at getting around the edge. So if you're in a league that's balanced, there's going to be someone that thinks he's going to be the next superstar D end, and I don't think that's the case in those leagues. Just because you're going to live or die by that sack, and if you're not in a big play league, one sack's really not going to do for you. So he has been very impressive, and I think that's it's helping the entire Falcons defense, who's playing really good right now under Quinn. So, but yeah, he's a DL3 in balanced, DL2 in tackle heavy, with potential, but or not. I'm sorry, sack heavy, tackle heavy. I'm still fading him.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Now that he realized he's a defensive end, I don't know why I thought he got switched back to linebacker. I think there was a lot of rumors going around it right before week 1, and I don't own him on any roster, so I haven't kept track of him. But I know just watching him, he's been extremely impressive. And I think DL2 in sack heavy leagues is probably about right. But I think with a good showing this year, he could easily jump into that DL1 category, especially with just the void of young talent there. You know, we're already missing part of the season for Gregory, and I won't even talk about him because he didn't get to play this year. I'm just pouring one out. But let's talk about some other guys who are actually playing this year. Actually, let's talk about Randy Gregory. He's injured, which totally sucks and lets me down on a bunch of the teams that I drafted him. But I thought he looked pretty good for when he was playing. I think he's going to be a pretty explosive player for that defense for a long time, and he's going to be consistent, which is always nice for your IDP plays. But overall, I mean, if you've got him, wait it out. If not, try and take advantage of this point where people are just freaking out because he's not playing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. These are rookies. You draft rookies, and yet people get so impatient when they're not putting up stats right away. And I was a little lower on Gregory than you and Tyler, but the limited snaps I saw in a Cowboys uniform, he was good. He was a force off the edge. And this injury really has kind of opened up a buy low window, which I would be exploiting more, except I'm in 2 leagues with you guys, so that's not going to happen. And then I don't really need D lineman help in my other leagues. I'm just stacked. So I think he's a definite buy, and easily I would definitely offer Vic for Gregory plus, depending on what. But yeah, he looked really good, and he's gonna come back, but Hardy's not gonna be there next year if he's gonna want a ton of money, and it's probably gonna be Gregory and DeMarcus Lawrence.
Yeah, and I thought DeMarcus Lawrence also looked good on a non-rookie note. I think those guys are going to be really both solid IDP plays. Let's talk about a guy who has looked a lot better than his stats are going to show in the next few weeks, and that's Leonard Williams. He's looked really, really good for a rookie. You know, he looks like the guy who people were touting as probably the best player in this draft. And unfortunately, Sheldon Richardson's coming back soon. It's going to divide up the snaps. It's going to make his production a little less consistent. But, I mean, for those of you guys in best ball IDP leagues, he definitely gets a bump because he's going to have some hot weeks. He's already showing that he can be almost as good of a player as Wilkerson.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with Wilkerson, so it has been a joy to watch him play. I think that's one thing about 5 techniques, or DNs in general. You can have an awesome week and have 5 or 6 hurries and just not put up any stats. Leonard Williams, he would look a lot better if he wasn't playing next to Wilkerson, because Wilkerson just steals the show. But he has been Wilkerson light. He is fantastic against the run so far. He's gotten a lot of hurries, interior pressure. The one thing I noticed too is the Jets were running a lot of 4-man line, nickel, the defensive tackle. So given this pass happy NFL, I could totally see a lot of nickel being ran and all three of those guys out there at the same time. In base, they're going to keep the big nose Damon Harrison out there. But if there's, 50 to 60% nickel snaps and those guys get those snaps and then they rotate those base snaps to stay fresh, it could be actually all three, I think, could be top 30 linemen. And I'm keeping Wilkerson in the DL1. Richardson, he probably will get suspended too later in the year. But who knows with how the NFL works. But I'd say it's Wilkerson, Richardson, Leonard Williams, DL1, DL2, DL3.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but that's probably what's happening with Richardson now. And I was super high on Richardson, to the point where I still had him as a DL1, even when we knew he was going to be playing next to Wilkerson. And it's very possible that they could run a scheme where all three of them will have value independently, but I'm not pushing all my chips into that just because I just don't see it happening. I don't know. That one's got a lot of potential to go a lot of different ways, and it's probably why I'm hesitant to buy into it at all at this point, because there's so many different ways it could go.
You know what else we didn't mention is Wilkerson. They never signed him. There was that big rush to sign him, and he had all the leverage because Richardson was suspended or in trouble. So never mind, he was suspended. He is suspended, and he's going to get suspended again for the drag racing, whatever it was with the underage kid and all that stuff. But Wilkerson is not signed, so they're going to do whatever they can to keep him. But a defensive end franchise tag is if. So it's possible. I mean, I'd probably say 80% chance he's a Jet next year. Maybe
yeah, that's
85.
Probably.
And the thing is if he's not a Jet, there's a 50% chance he moves to 3 technique and gains DT eligibility.
Okay, we can't.
Wilkerson is a big dude.
We can't talk about this. I've only got one pair of pants.
Okay. That sounds good. But yeah, now we're getting a little off topic. It was supposed to be about Leonard Williams, and it's just more about how much I love Momo Wilkie.
Let's talk about a guy who finally is not getting starter snaps, and that's Shaq Thompson, who he's technically right now third in defensive snaps for the team in terms of linebackers, but that's also with Kuechly being out. So he's getting snaps, though. He's getting snaps real early on. He's already got, 40-something% snaps for the year. Thomas Davis is the only one who's really had extremely high percentage. I think, who is it? Who else is starting there? Klein?
I bet Thomas Davis is right around 98% snaps.
Probably.
And he's been doing a lot with it. But for Shaq Thompson, I had him in a couple spots, and I'm one of those people where I'm not expecting it right away. But I'll tell you what, I was expecting him to play more with Kuechly out. I was not expecting A.J. Klein to play as much as he did. And there's some people I bet that are already kind of annoyed, and it's only 3 weeks. And you can possibly have a buy low, play Kuechly's out and he's still not putting up good points. He did get a sack this week, so that might ruin your plans. But it's definitely a possible buy low now. I haven't soured on him at all, but people are impatient. So I would use this whole he's still not an every week starter with Kuechly out as trying to buy low on him.
Yeah, and I can completely understand the him not getting as many snaps with Kuechly out, because I would feel like they'd want to put somebody in there that's at least somewhat consistent. And I don't feel like that's what Shaq Thompson is right now. He's super raw, and consistency is not going to be his forte right now. But it doesn't mean I'm giving up on him in the least. He's gonna have a pretty hot future. He's looked pretty good on the snaps he's gotten, but until Davis leaves, that's the one he's going to be competing with mainly for snaps.
Yeah, but I know franchises seem to do some stupid things, but you got to at some point just believe that they didn't use a first-round pick on a 2-down linebacker. So, but Davis is playing awesome. So, yeah, when is this going to happen? Is it going to be 2016 or is it going to be 2017? But I don't know. I believe in Shaq. So, and he's so cheap right now. Even if you get him at market value, he's well worth a dash than whoever else you're going to get in his and then you can buy some cheap old dude for his short-term output. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, his price of acquisition right now is well worth it, whether he starts in 2016 or if he starts in 2017. Because when he does start, we could be looking at Jamie Collins numbers, if everything breaks right, especially with Kuechly being as consistent of a tackler as he is. He's going to have some freedom to really run around and do some damage.
Yeah, Jamie Collins is an interesting one too, because Jamie Collins didn't play a snap his rookie year until the playoffs. And then they just couldn't keep him off the field. He was just too explosive. And as much as we're saying Thomas Davis is playing good right now, he's getting to that age where your body just starts breaking down. I just turned 28, and I feel like I'm 25 years older than I was when I was 21. I cannot recover from drinking and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I like Shaq Thompson. Try to buy him now.
Yep, and I think we got one more rookie to talk about, unless my dog wants to talk about someone else. And that's Paul Dawson, who is not getting time on the field. And why don't you talk about Paul Dawson while I put him outside?
All right, sounds good. So Paul Dawson, Tyler's not here. We're talking so good about Tyler right now. I don't know why we should be just ripping him to pieces. But he was always Paul's pre-draft or took him, and nobody really liked Paul Dawson. Everyone just talked about how unathletic he was and how he couldn't make plays that were necessary in the pros and all this. And then the preseason happened, and Sam Munson from PFF kept putting gifs up of Paul Dawson just getting skinny and in between the guard and the center, and beautiful tackle for loss. His instincts are just insane. And then there are those plays where he just can't keep up with a scat back running back or a wide receiver cross or even a quarterback that's got wheels. He falls right on his face because he's not athletic enough. And it's one of those things where it's unfortunate because he's such a good player that he doesn't have those physical gifts, but he is much better than somebody that has all those gifts with no instincts. So, again, Paul Dawson's kind of like Shaq Thompson to me. I'm still buying. Him not playing is just going to create a buy low because all these people are going to get impatient. And Marvin Lewis, he loves vets, and he loves mediocre vets. So both Ray Maluga and Vincent Ray, they're both terrible. They're both average at best. And then AJ Hawk is below average at best. So it's just a matter of time before they have to put Dawson on the field. and I think he's a great play. So buy low.
Yeah, I really don't even have to add anything to that because, I mean, I would just be literally repeating what you said. So let's move on. Let's talk about a guy who is in some of my leagues, the defensive end too, and that's Jaquez Smith. I don't even know how to say his first name. Defensive
Some
end.
people call him Jack. I thought it was Jaquez. I don't know. We're ignorant. We
I
should
think they
probably
call
look
him
it up.
Jack for short,
Okay.
which it doesn't matter. He plays for Tampa Bay, so I don't care about calling him anything that is close to respect, unless he's Levante David.
Yeah.
But he looked really good. I watched him every snap in the Saints game, and he was just all over Breeze. He's the reason why Breeze sat out week 3 is the two different hits he took from Smith. It fucked his world up apparently because it was. I mean, he wasn't throwing right for the whole rest of the game, but I think we can continue to expect things like that, especially with how consistent that defensive line has been. McCoy is still just as good as ever, and now that their linebacker core is a lot more reliable, he's going to have some time to really get in and wreck some stuff.
Yeah, definitely. He is definitely great off the edge. I don't really know how his tackle floor is going to be. He kind of everything I said about Vic Beasley kind of is the same thing with Smith right here. The one thing is he doesn't play all the snaps too. He's a rotational pass rusher. He plays I think about 50 to 60%, probably about 60% of the snaps. So the tackle floor is not going to be there. The sacks are. So uh, if someone's going to give me, I have him right at like DL 25. I think I pushed him in the top 25 just because he was so impressive those first 2 weeks. But I'm definitely looking. If somebody wants to look at the player stats and look, oh man, this guy's DL2. I'm gonna try to get him at DL15. I'm selling easily. I just don't like the tackle floor, and I think once teams start realizing this guy's beating them and hitting their quarterback, they're gonna run at him. They're gonna start chipping him. And the other thing is Gerald McCoy. He has a lot of injuries, so if McCoy does go down and Smith is the top, threat, I don't think he's going to be able to do something. So I like him. He's done well, but I'm going to slow my roll a little bit and back off.
Yeah, I'm absolutely not paying anything even resembling DL1 costs, and putting him there in my rankings would just be absurd. But I could see right around DL25. That seems pretty fair. Low end DL2, high end DL3. But that's mainly for big play leagues. In your balance scoring and your tackle heavy scoring, I'm just fading him altogether. But balance scoring, he's still going to have some value. He's still scoring really highly, even those balance scoring leagues. But I'm not going to take what is right now his peak and make that his average, because it's not the case. It's not what's going to happen. But let's talk about another guy who I think's got probably a better chance to hold out where his scoring has been landing, and that's Henry Anderson. Henry Anderson is the DN3 in some of my leagues, and he's looked every bit the part, deserving of that. He's kind of like Vic Beasley in that he's one of the few players I'm actually interested in off their defense. For Dynasty, of course. I mean, Freeman is still good. DeQuell Jackson is still good. Mike Adams is good, but they're all about a billion D years old. So I don't play redraft, so I really don't have interest in them unless I'm really making a push, and there's still guys I'd probably rather take over them in their respective positions. But Mike Adams is real cheap, and he's on waiver wires in some leagues, which is just ridiculous. I don't care if he turns 40, if he still plays like that. I don't care. I'm going to play him for the 3 weeks I get him. But back to Henry Anderson. I mean, he looked really good for a rookie. This guy was not on my radar before the preseason at all, and he's climbing up quickly for me.
Yeah, I'd put him. I think I would be torn if today I got an offer in my inbox of Henry Anderson for my Eric Armstead. That's where I'm putting him about. And Anderson was drafted later. He is. I think Armstead has higher ceiling, but but he could bust. Anderson looks like the real deal. There was one play that I saw. It was phenomenal. He absolutely overpowered DeBrickashaw Ferguson, who is an elite left tackle with a great name, but he's the real deal. It's just one of those things with 3-4 defensive linemen is the ceiling's limited unless they truly become an elite NFL player like JJ Watt, who I guess he's not even elite. There's I don't know what a word for him is. Wilkerson, he's an elite talent, an elite 5 technique, but I have nothing bad to say about Anderson so far. And he is definitely the real deal. And I started to I didn't really know much about him because I don't do much college scouting until PFF actually highlighted him as one of their like secret superstars, and I went back and watched quite a bit of his film, and they nailed that one. It's one of the Grigson's only good draft picks, I feel like, but yep, like Drew said, their defense is terrible. He's probably their best player in their defense already, at least playing right now. And I don't know if I'm buying though. Again, we're to this point where they're playing so well, and there's such a sexy name right now. Him and Jaquez Smith being top 3 D linemen. That what's the point of buying right now? Wait for them to struggle, because once these teams look at tape and they find one little weakness on these guys, they're going to exploit it. And if you have 3 or 4 straight down games, that's when you pounce. That's when those players, see what's happening to them. They adjust, and then they'll rise to that mean of what used to be, the absolute ceiling, how they've been struggling, and they'll give you right in between that. So, yep, we can move on. Sorry.
Yeah, I did want to make a quick point that as much as I like Eric Armstead, it would be Henry Anderson pretty comfortably for me, just based on how good he's looked. And another guy that's looked really good this season, and we kind of expected him to as long as he stayed healthy, is Sean Lee. I mean, this guy, I was really hesitant because I wasn't sure how badly the injury was going to hurt him, but apparently it didn't at all. He's doing the things that made him an LB1 consistently. 2012 was that the last time he played a full season? It's been a minute.
He's only played 1 full season.
Yeah, he's looked good. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And granted, I'm not going out and paying LB1 prices for him because that injury risk is so real, and he's already super old, and his body's got to be even older than that number indicates. But if I can get him on a competing team for high-end LB2 prices, I'll pay it. I'll pay it just because I know he can exceed that, and even if he falls, then oh well.
Yeah, I talked a little bit on Twitter about him, but really what I'm getting at is this is what Sean Lee always does. When he's on the field, he has these monster weeks. The LB1, not LB1, the LB1 weeks. If you lack depth and you need Sean Lee every week and you have no one behind him, you better be shopping him, because if you have no one behind him and he breaks, which is this whole predicting injuries and injury prone. I try not to go there, but there's certain players where it's a trend, and his body's not made for it. And how he plays so aggressive, and he plays with so much heart and so much effort that he puts himself in bad situations to where he gets hurt. Not even the ACL, but like those neck injuries, those are so scary. So if I'm shallow, or if I lack depth and I have Sean Lee, I'm looking to trade him. If I'm in a shallow league with shallow starting requirements, I'm starting it and I'm keeping it because, pick somebody else up if he gets hurt. And if I have depth, I don't think I could trade him right now, except if I get one of the top 15 linebackers in Dynasty, just because if I'm contending, he is giving you a significant advantage every week. So I hope he stays healthy because he seems like a good guy and he keeps coming back and keeps doing these things. But yeah, he's a force.
Yeah, records. The history kind of indicates that it's not going to continue, but as long as he's going, then I'm all about it. And let's talk about another guy who is already injured for the season, and he's on the short-term IR, which means he's still going to be out till almost December. And that's Charles Johnson over in Carolina. And really, I mean, I was not too interested in him as it was, just because these injuries have become such kind of an every season thing, and he's old. I don't like old people. We've talked about this. But it gave Coney Ely a chance to get some snaps, and he immediately blew it, apparently. Which that I'm tearing up a little bit because of that. I really liked Coney Ely. He was probably my favorite player that got DN designation out of last year's class. Even over DeMarcus Lawrence, who I liked a lot. But it's looking like it's going to be the Mario Addison show, which, I mean, if you can still get him, I don't know what kind of league you're in where he made it past waivers the first 2 weeks that he had big games, but he's looking to be a pretty consistent DN for you this season, at least until Charles Johnson comes back, if he comes back at all.
Yeah, maybe I'm not as down as on Coney Ely. Pass rushers take some time. He was really good in the preseason. I think it's more Coney Ely and Addison splitting snaps right now, and it's a full-out battle. Who gets full snaps? We should probably talk about him right now, the Jared Allen trade. So Jared Allen is now going to take over for Charles Johnson. I believe they're moving Ely to left end now, and Jared Allen's playing right end. So that's a little bit different because Charles Johnson used to play left end. And I've talked about this before with people. Players in real life are not like Madden. You can't just take a right end and throw him at left end and get the same 95 player. That's not how things work. Right end and left end are different. Just like throwing a ball with your right hand and your left hand, you have more power with certain moves. You're just more comfortable with certain moves. There's also differences in pass protection because if you're a right end, you're going to get that elite left tackle. If you're a left end, you're going to get the right tackle who's usually not as good, but you're also going to get more help from a tight end or a running back. So that's why Jerry Hughes is amazing at right end because he abuses the left tackle with his speed moves. But then players like Carlos Dunlap, he always plays left end because he's so good at taking on a double team and holding the point of attack. So it's going to be interesting how this all works out with Ely, but I still like Ely. Charles Johnson, he's always gets that nice about 10 sacks, but the injuries have piled up. He's kind of like he's a bad Cameron Wake because he's old. He's a light version of that. So I'm done with Charles Johnson. You can find better guys. Get what you can. You might not be able to get anything. And Jared Allen, I think that's a downgrade. from Charles Johnson to Jared Allen. If someone wants to pay you for Jared Allen that you for some reason had as a linebacker, take it, because he's almost 34, I think, or something around there. What are your takes on Jared Allen?
He's old.
I shouldn't even ask. Yeah.
And just he's consistently deteriorated from what he used to be. But he's still gonna. I guarantee you, he's still gonna get the snaps, which is gonna eat up production possibilities for Ely or Addison. If they're rotating in, it's pretty much kind of gross, and he's gonna last maybe another year there at best, which I don't think is happening. I think Carolina needs to make a push this year, and why not get a guy who they think could still be a good defensive end for a 6th round pick? But you bring up the point about playing right end and left end is so different. It's the same thing with left tackle and right tackle. Players are coming out in the draft and it's like, well, he's not a top tier left tackle, but you could easily play him at right tackle. He's never played right tackle in his entire career. It's an entirely different position. It's just, it's the Madden syndrome. People just play Madden and assume that's exactly how it correlates to the real NFL. In Madden, you can move a D end into DT slots, and I mean, there's rarely any consequence to doing it. Whereas in real life, if you put most DNs at defensive tackle, they're going to get ate up. But
yeah, and the last thing about Ely is, if you want to buy him, you might want to wait a little bit, because he's splitting snaps. And once Charles Johnson comes back, they're going to play Johnson and Jared Allen at the same time. So, Ely, you can even play off Ely's a bench player now. So I'm not really souring on Ely. I've never been super high on him, but you can always look for buy lows.
Yeah, I agree. But once December comes around, that defensive line is going to look like a Golden Corral line. I'm so not looking forward to it. But let's talk about some stuff I'm actually looking forward to. And I like Geno Atkins going back to form. He was my DT1 going into, I think it was last year, right before he got injured. And I mean, it's pretty much where he belongs. I mean, Aaron Donald has pushed him out because Aaron Donald is the man, but it's not because Geno Atkins has looked any worse. He just can't look as good as Aaron Donald. Even though he's getting up there in years, he's still top 2, top 3 defensive tackle for me.
Yeah, he actually got hurt 2 years ago. Last year he just played and he was kind of a shell of himself.
That's what it was. I'm thinking that injury took something away from him.
He came back and he just was not the same player. He was not explosive at all. And he's back. There are very few tackles in this league that have 10, 12 sack upside, and he's one of them. I watched his film so far. It is good. You're looking at Aaron Donald, and I would not argue if someone took Geno Atkins DT2. I still like McCoy, but they're right about the same age too, 27-ish. I'm not a huge Ndamukong Suh fan. I mean, I think but he just doesn't have the upside. Plus, he's a piece of shit. So I just don't really like rostering him. But yeah, it's Donald, and then it's a group of Atkins, McCoy, Darius, Suh. So if you held strong and held faith that Atkins would return to form, you feel great right now. And I did one spot, and I'm excited because Bengals are playing good, and I believe he has like 2.5 sacks already, and he's been a force. They've had to double him, and he's still been pushing both guys directly back into the quarterback's face all the time.
Yeah, I mean it's not too far to say that Geno Atkins is the best player on that defense when Perfect isn't playing, because Geno Atkins is amazing. Um, but I would take Atkins over McCoy, and I like McCoy. But can we all stop and talk about how good Aaron Donald is? Oh my god, he's getting to the point where he's like in the conversation for a top 5 defensive player in the NFL altogether. He's that good. Um, and just pairing him with Quinn on that line and Brockers, who's no pushover as himself, that's just it's nasty. And then they got Ogletree, you know, McDonald. It's amazing that these guys are all considered IDP starters, because you'd think they'd all just steal numbers from each other. But no, they just make more numbers somehow. It's probably magic.
Yeah, I love Aaron Donald. I had him at like DL 10 or something like that beginning of the year, which I think he's moved up maybe a little bit. I mean, he looks so good, and then it dawns on me, the Bears. I thought we had Aaron Donald like in the bag. They didn't need a defensive tackle. Why did they need a defensive tackle? Boom, the Rams take Aaron Donald, and then this year, Leonard Williams. The Jets don't need a defensive end. They don't need him, and sniped 2 years in a row. So that's depressing, because Aaron Donald is one of those players that changes the entire game, because interior pressure is much harder for a quarterback to be effective than around the edge, because there's nowhere to move. So he is a freak, and I might need to move Donald up to DL6 right behind Wilkerson. Now that I think about it, I mean, I don't know how you can't not. He's just amazing.
I don't even hate that. He's probably right next to Ziggy for me right now, and I'm super high on Ziggy. I always have been, and he's looked just as good as I expected him to this season. But I mean, Donald, he's if he ends up being my defensive line 4 at the end of the year, I wouldn't be surprised. Right after Jones, Quinn, and Watt, he's looked that good. I mean, as a rookie, he led the league in tackles for loss as a defensive tackle. That's amazing. All of it's amazing. And I remember that whole draft season. It seemed like every mock draft I read, they had Aaron Donald going to the Bears. But so sad.
Yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow, because 2 straight years, and it was those. I was watching the draft, and I was like, these teams don't need these players, and usually teams don't do that. Just keep drafting the same position and locking it up, because in Dynasty, you should take the best player available in rookie drafts. In the pros, you don't always have to do that, because contracts make everything different. You can't keep these players for forever. Trading is not nearly as easy as it is fantasy football owners. So I was heartbroken 2 straight years. So let's move on, please.
All right, I'll do that for you. Let's talk about. Actually, we're not going to talk about how bad John Bostic is, because that's just gonna. Well, no, he's gone. He's off the Bears, so we can talk about how bad he is now. He's hot garbage, and I'm kind of intrigued to see why Bill Belichick would trade for a turd when he's got so many good linebackers in that core. You know, maybe it's a depth move, but still, I don't know that I'd want John Bostic as depth, because that means if one of my guys goes down, it's like, oh well, that's a useless position now. He has absolutely no
value. I think they gave like a 7th rounder, and it might be conditional.
It was a conditional 6th.
Okay, so the thing about John Bostic is he's athletic, he is quick, and he can lay the boom, but he has no idea how to play football. Like I think someone on Twitter said it. They're like, he couldn't find a football if you handed it to him because he can't read run plays. He can't read pulling guards. He can't do anything. He's just lost.
He probably doesn't know how to read at all, to be honest.
It's possible. He went to Florida. So this is going to hurt again because they should have traded John Bostic for Jamie Collins because they took Bostic before Collins. So that should have been a fair trade. But instead, now the Patriots get both. He has no value. I've been asked by a couple people if he has value now. No. He is they might try to put him in a role that he does very limited things and uses his athleticism to succeed. But I'm saying at best, like if all the stars align, he'll play 20 snaps a game next year because Collins and Hightower have those two every down backer spots locked down.
I will say something that might make you feel a little bit better. If Collins had gone to Chicago, I don't think he'd be the player he is now. I think a lot of the reason he's been as successful as he is because he had Bill Belichick to maximize what his talents were and to grow him as a player. You know,
that's supposed to make me feel better. Well, if that guy went to your team, he'd suck.
Well, I mean, at least you guys didn't miss out on a surefire linebacker prospect and just skipped him altogether. You know, he had to be, you know, trained to be a better linebacker. And, you know, it's not like they just drafted Luke Kuechly and he somehow made it to the second round. But
okay,
I mean, I watched Collins every week in college, and he's not the guy you're watching in the NFL every week right now. He was not that caliber of player. I loved Jamie Collins, but I did not predict him being one of the best linebackers in the league. But let's talk about a guy who I watched a lot in college as well, who's also looking pretty good, and that's Quan Alexander, who is kind of forced his way up that depth chart and to the point where he's going to hold that job for his entire contract, provided, you know, he continues to look as good as he does, because he looks like a starting linebacker right now as a rookie. And I'm to the point where I would still go out and pay regardless of whether he's if they want a little bit above market, because he's going to continue to show what he's shown, and he's going to gain a lot more value by the time the offseason hits.
Yeah. We've been talking all off season that this was his job. Bruce Carter was not anything to be scared about. He's playing every single snap. He has the green dot, so he's already calling plays over Levante, which is nothing on Levante. You want your Mike calling plays. He's in the middle of the field. You want him organizing the defense. That's how it is. I've watched film. I'm not ecstatic with his play so far, but we're talking about an undersized linebacker in his first 3 games that wasn't supposed to be at this level already. So there's ways to improve. I actually sold a share just because somebody wanted him and they were paying me above for it, and it ended up getting me Ogletree in the deal, and I couldn't decline it. I didn't want to give Quan, but I had to. But these are some of these things where, is he playing awesome? No, he's playing serviceable. He's improving. He's already he's like, what is he, 225? Like, he's a small dude.
Yeah, he was not a big dude in college, and he's not. He hasn't put any muscle on in the NFL.
So give him an off season. Yeah, give him a full off season. And the other thing is, which one of the biggest things, he's on a team that has holes where they aren't going to invest in a middle linebacker when they have one like him that they could see as a longtime starter. It's the Jonathan Cyprien effect. That dude has played terrible, but they have so many holes that they can't they just keep putting him out there, and he's got the draft pedigree, and he's playing. They're gonna look at other positions. So I like Quan. And I agree. I would pay more than market value because his market value is still pretty low. I mean, I don't think people are buying into it as being a real thing, but he's real and hopefully he improves.
Yeah, really the biggest buying factor for me was he's continued to exceed his expectations since he got to Tampa Bay. And the fact that he's out there every snap now just means he's going to improve as a linebacker, which he's shown he's willing to put in the effort. So I'm expecting good things from him. Let's talk about next guy who is a real every week starter, and that's a honey badger. I mean, can you imagine what he would be doing in a non-crowded defense? Because that defense is full of some playmakers, and he's still just making his presence known. Watching him play against New Orleans in Week 1 was brutal because it seemed like every time a player touched the ball, there he was. And the fact that he's healthy now, it's as long as he stays healthy, this is like he's got to be in the top 5 or 6 DBs for Dynasty right now. I mean, I can't think of a guy besides Burnett, Harrison Smith, probably still Weddle, regardless of age, that I would for sure take over him.
What about my boy Rashad?
It's close. I like Rashad, but they both are.
I think my top 3 like weekly starts would be Harrison Smith, Rashad Jones, and Tyrann Mathieu right now. Burnett is on my shit list because he always is questionable when they have a late game. And I have to bench him and start terrible players instead of him. But yeah, he has been flying all over the field. It's undeniable how talented this guy is. It's merely injuries, and hopefully he's over that, and that we don't have to talk about that ever again. And he just keeps chugging. The only thing is, it's hard to like project this too, because if you have a DB that is giving you stats, it's really hard to trade him because you're going to lose weekly points. But I guess the only thing I could think of is if the Cardinals ever get a serviceable linebacker that could eat tackles, but there's not one on the team right now. So he is, I don't know if I would put him in the elite tier, but short term, he's an elite DB and he's right there. Like, I'm thinking about it. Maybe tomorrow I'll have him in there. I don't know.
I'm to the point where I don't know that having a linebacker there, a really good linebacker, would eat that much into his production because his instincts are that sharp that he's just where the play is, regardless of where the linebackers are. And I don't think there's a DB in the game who's got a better nose for the big play than Mathieu does. He's if he leads the league in interceptions, I wouldn't be surprised. Pick sixes and punt returns for touchdowns were his bread and butter at LSU, and apparently nothing's changed. Which, if you're an Arizona fan, you got to be stoked because taking him in the 3rd round with the massive character concerns he had, and then he turns into this. It's got to be pretty exciting as a Cardinals fan. And let's talk about another guy that's got a nose for the big play, who I've actually been really excited to see do well, and that's Haile Kikaha, which I still don't know how to say his first name right, and I'm okay with that because he's been an LB2 every week, I think. And as a guy who's supposed to be just a pass rusher, he's been doing that and more. And maybe I'm just overly excited because we actually have players on the defense that are doing good things, and not just missing tackles and watching them run away. But Kikaha looks like the real deal. And if you're in big play scoring, if people aren't overvaluing him yet, I'd jump on that like yesterday. But he's not a defensive end. He's not going to be a defensive end. Let's just let that one go for the week that MFL had him as defensive end.
Yeah. So speaking of defensive end, didn't Akeem Nicks get benched for a little bit? So
He
as much
did.
as we say he's not a defensive end, it's a possibility in the future. It's a bonus, but I wouldn't expect it because he's playing so well right now. I need to go look at the tape. From what I was hearing grumblings that he was actually playing weak side in the base, and Hawthorne was playing strong side. Um, the point is though on nickel downs, he's moving up and rushing off the line from what I've seen, and Hicks is moving to tackle, and it's working for him. So yeah, great player, young. He has the draft pedigree. He has the college production. Checks all the boxes.
Yeah, bringing up Hicks, it's even if Hicks does get benched in the long term.
Knicks. We're talking. Sorry,
Akeem Hicks.
Well, isn't it Knicks?
It's Hicks.
Or is it Hicks? Oh, I don't know.
Because his name's so similar to Hakeem Nicks.
Okay, that's the problem. Yeah.
There were a lot of rumors going around that he benched himself and wouldn't go back out. So the whole thing is kind of crazy. But I think the main reason why Kikaha is not going to end up an end is we have better depth of the D line than we do linebacker, and we can't really afford to lose a starting linebacker to move him to the line. I mean, our linebackers are. I mean, we're starting Hawthorne. That should say everything. We've got some really solid defensive line depth. Not all of them are world beaters, but they're going to be a lot more consistent than whoever we've got behind Kikaha for linebacker, who I don't even know who it is anymore because we dropped and picked up so many different guys. But I guarantee you I don't want him on my team, NFL or fantasy. Let's see. Who is our next guy? Oh, let's take a moment to have some good news. And how about Eric Berry coming back and looking like he hasn't missed a beat? I mean, this guy was diagnosed with cancer 10 months ago, and he's out in the NFL now just killing it. My wife's watching the game with me last night, and she asked, like, he had cancer in December. Why is he playing football? That after all that chemo, his bones can just be super brittle. He's just going to break. And I'm like, yeah, but they're not. He's a DB1. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's definitely a better life story than an IDP story, that he's healthy and he's already beat it. And but for IDP reasons, since that's what we talk about, it's mind blowing to me that he's already playing 98% of the snaps. I was thinking to fade him all this year, pick him up cheap, and he would just be cycled in as a emotional leader and on nickel packages because he has so much flexibility, and you can use them in so many different ways. But he's playing all the snaps. He hasn't produced yet. He's a DB. Relax. Start your DB ones, and it'll all even out at the end. But yeah, it's just a feel-good story. He's going to win Comeback Player of the Year, and he deserves to.
Yeah, and I'm right where you were. I was not expecting anything from Barry this year, especially having Parker and Tyvon Branch this year. They had solid starters if they weren't going to use them. But, I mean, he's come back and he's been playing at full speed. It's just the stats haven't matched what he's done yet. And I mean, it'll happen. I'm not worried about it. So let's talk about a guy that his performance also isn't showing up in the box score, and that's Bobby Wagner. Let's all just take a deep breath. Let's all relax. He was most of our LB3 for a reason. He's still just as good as he was, and it doesn't help that Cam Chancellor being gone. That defense looked just lost, and I think they're all gonna kind of catch up with each other. and it's gonna go back to looking how it used to. Wagner is going to finish the year as an LB1 regardless of how he started this first few weeks. So just keep putting him in your lineup, and good things will happen.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, this isn't Wagner's first year or even his second year. This is his fourth year. He's proven he is awesome. Last week, he had no tackle opportunities because the Bears just punted every 4 plays. So relax, keep going. He's a stud. Next player.
Our next player is Danny Trevathan, who, I'm kind of sad we don't have Tyler here to talk about this one because then we could watch him cry, which is always fun. But Trevathan is, for a guy who is supposed to be, one of their leading linebackers, he's kind of done garbage in terms of snap counts. I think Tyler brought up that he broke into 60% this week, which is good and all, but for a guy that was, supposed to be able to be an every down linebacker, 60% is not what you want to hear. I'm dropping in my rankings, but I just don't know how far it's appropriate right now. I feel like I need another week, and I need to be able to actually sit down and watch him and see if it's just he's coming back slow from the injury and they don't want to give him 100% snaps, or they're just that impressed with what Brandon Marshall's doing.
Yeah, I'm a Danny fan. I think he's better than Marshall. I think he's looked better than Marshall. I think he's more explosive than Marshall. And the only thing is he's just not as reliable right now because of those injuries. So I've seen the talent. I know the talent. I'm going to just hold him where I have him and buy if I can get him cheap. And assume those snaps will go up. With the snaps that he's had, he's been effective. He's been making plays, making tackles. He's had an insane tackle rate the first couple weeks with limited snaps, and the snaps are slightly increasing. So, and he's good in coverage. So there's no reason to take him off except if they're easing him back. I mean, he had 2 serious knee injuries. So I think I'm mimicking all what Tyler thinks too, because he has faith in him, and I like him. I have him probably in my mid-20s, and I'll bump him maybe down to my low 20s. But once you get in that range, it's like these guys are unproven, or they're older, or they're injury risk, or they have low ceilings, or there's no risk linebackers in that spot anyways. So I'm gonna take the guy who can be an LB1.
Yeah, I can dig it. And it's the only way this really makes sense is if they're easing him back in from this injury, because they were pretty brutal injuries. So I gotta hope that's
and similar.
Case. Yep. And let's. I don't feel like there's a whole lot else to say on that. Let's talk about guy who we liked during the preseason and is looking even better than we were expecting. That's Telvin Smith, who's the goatiest goat that ever goated. And goating is a verb now. He's a monster. And, Eric was saying it in the Voxer group earlier that he's going to eat when Paz leaves. And Posluszny is having a kind of a renaissance season for considering how old he is. But Telvin Smith is still producing in spite of the fact that Posluszny is still tearing it up. And this guy is, he's got to be in your LB1 rankings. And if he's not, then you're doing something wrong. I'm getting to the point where I'll probably take him over CJ Mosley. And I know that sounds crazy to some people, but, I had Mosley as my LB4 kind of just because that's what, that's where it landed, not because I was that confident in him. But I watched Telvin Smith play, and I want him on my teams.
Yeah, I'll just nothing really to add there. And if you're crazy, I'm crazy, because I could see that as well. minus that I think I could get more for Mosley because some people really like him. I think I have Mosley as my LB6 or maybe even 7 because I have Ogletree 4, and I think I may have Collins and Bowman over Mosley too. So, but yeah, I've had Telvin Smith at LB 10 or 11 range all off season. It's not high enough. He is playing great, and once Paz leaves, boom. So, yep, stud.
Yeah, I think that early somewhere 10 to 13 was kind of where I had him too, and it's clearly not high enough. And I would have had Bowman higher than Mosley, but I was still apprehensive about how he'd come back from the injury. And unfortunately, he's already tweaked his knee, so I don't know how good he's coming back from injury. But when he's playing, when he's getting those snaps, he looks like, especially in week 1, he looked like the guy who can just finish the year as the LB1 because he's that talented. So hopefully he bounces back from this little knee thing fairly quickly because, I mean, he's just one of those guys that regardless of whether you're playing him in fantasy or not, you just want to watch him play because he's just that good. But that's
Yeah,
kind
he
of
didn't miss any snaps too. He kind of stretched his knee out and kept playing. He did look a little slow week 3, but he also hasn't played this many snaps of football in over a year. So I'm not panicking, but I am monitoring.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid way to put it. But I think at this point he's pushing CJ Mosley right now, and I think the biggest thing for me is not only the injury but the age, which I hate old linebackers, but I'll make an exception for Bowman. And let's talk about a guy who I haven't got to watch at all and in real detail, and that's Brian Cushing. So I'm gonna give you the floor.
He looks good. He looks really good. He looks healthy, which is always been his problem. I was kind of maybe naive, and I thought the injuries mixed with the performance enhancers and all this, that he was just not the same player. But he looks good this year. He's playing a lot of snaps. Last year, even when he was healthy at the beginning of the year, I use that in quotes because I don't know how healthy he was, but he was only getting 50, 60% of the snaps. He's the hog right now, the snap hog, and he's getting tackles. And he over the offseason, he had a knee, he had a wrist, and he had a hand surgery or something. He had like 3 surgeries. But he looks good, and he's hilarious on Hard Knocks. So I like him as a short-term linebacker. But if someone's going to pay you again, as if this guy is going to keep producing like this, sell him because it's a trend. He just breaks. Sean Lee Light.
Yeah, I really don't have anything to add. I haven't got to watch him, but if you can get good value for him, I'm selling him because he's just it's that Sean Lee thing all over again. It's gonna happen. The only difference is how long he's out or how long he gets to play. But let's go talk about a guy who I kind of given up hope for, but he's proved me wrong, and that's Kevin Minter, who I loved Kevin Minter as a you hush that mouth. I like Kevin Minter. I like Kevin Minter at LSU. I mean, I thought he was going to be good as soon as he got the opportunity last year, and he kind of dropped it. But now he's doing stuff. So you know what? I'll take it.
He's doing stuff, but nothing world beating. I'm more concerned that Weatherspoon is not doing stuff. Who I've always been a fanboy of, and I thought the injuries were the only thing holding him back. But that the problem is it didn't change. He didn't play like all off season. He got in the last preseason game, and you've missed so much time that you don't deserve to play. So I just want all the DBs. I don't care about the Arizona linebackers.
Yeah. I don't care how he looks doing the stuff that he's doing. I like Kevin Minter, and I'm going to keep rooting for him. And maybe I'll start him in a couple of spots too, because why not? And let's talk about a guy who's doing stuff and looking awesome doing it, and that's Eric Weddle, who we kind of touched on him a little bit earlier, but I really don't even feel like we need to touch on him that much because nothing's really changed. He's still the best player on defense in San Diego. And I feel like that's probably not going to change until they invest some serious draft capital in the position, and draft good players, which they haven't been managing to do. But Weddle good.
Weddle's good, but he's going to be gone next year. They've made it obvious they don't want him.
No.
They did not want to give him a contract. So you think they're going to get desperate, huh? And realize that he's their best player because he is?
I think that's what's going to happen. It's the only way it makes sense. How do you look at the rest of that defense and say, we'll be fine without Eric Weddle. We'll be all right.
I agree, because what's the point of having Philip Rivers if you're going to let Weddle go?
It seems like the move AJ would have made when he was still the GM. But they think I thought they were getting on the right track, but apparently that's not the case.